Now I believe there is a perfection in our lives. In any path that we take, there's a rightness to it. And those events that are difficult, contrary, painful, are part of what this life is about in terms of leading us in one path or another in what our journey is. For example, I remember in times of AA, people would say, well, I'm grateful for being a drunk because it brought me to these meetings where I can now begin to become conscious of my life. And so oftentimes the pathway we take, however it is, has a rightness to it, even though we certainly wouldn't advise anyone to become a drunk. So it's not to feel guilty, it's not to feel what's wrong with us, but just to look at it as it's occurring and understanding the nature of our participation in the creation of what this life is. That we are not victims, that we are not without choice, because in a sense we are creating each moment that we have. When creating each moment that we have is not simply in deciding what one will do, we're actually creating the thoughts that we have as to how we will feel. So that, what is a moment like? I mean, is the room dingy, or dark, or dull, or low light, or quiet, serene? Expansive. Are we simply the victims of all the occurrences of weather and circumstances? How are we responding to it? What are we taking from it? Because undoubtedly, each one of us is going to fall on our ass at various times in our life. Each one of us will find moments to cry, moments of anguish, as well as many moments of joy. And I don't believe that there's a malicious intent from the Creator in what all these aspects of life contain. I do believe that we are on a journey of enlightenment. Some of the journeys go like this, and then a couple of steps back, and this way, but we're moving towards it in our different ways in our own capacity. But as my good friend Thoreau has mentioned, an unexamined life is not worth living. It's important that we look at it, just to see it, and say, oh yes, look what I'm doing now. Look what I'm not doing now. Look how I'm responding to this moment. I remember this time in a room in a house in Vermont that I had rented. Beautiful, 300-year-old house. Old, a bit worn down, but still beautiful. And I was sitting in this room and I was about to think about whoever she was at the time. Why wasn't she here with me now? Seems many times in my life, whoever who I hadn't yet met, or she who I had met has been gone, or she who was totally my life. was not there. And I watched as I was getting into a whole thing and just ready to go into a nice good funk. I stood outside of myself and watched it. And I asked myself, oh, are you ready to go on this trip again? Because it wasn't the first time, you understand. And part of me looked back up and said, Bubba, will you? If I want to go this way, I'll go this way. But once you hear that, once you become conscious of it, and once you see the routine that has become, you look at it. And as I looked at it, I looked around the room and I looked through the window. There were lace curtains that you could see through. There was beautiful trees outside. There was a horse in a pasture. There was a breeze and the curtains were moving in the breeze. There was a lovely old and tasteless wallpaper on the wall. And I became present. I became fully present in the here and now. And I was feeling better. And enjoying just being where I was. Not what I wasn't, but what I was, and what was it right at that moment. And I became aware, basically, of transforming what could have been a mournful, moaning experience into one that was filled with the joy of being fully present. Then afterwards, as I realized the power to do this, I thought, well, why be a piker? Why simply settle for being all right when you're feeling down? Why not some point of elation? And so I would focus my mind on areas that were elating to me. And it became very clear that our environment is a projection of our consciousness, as much as anything else, or maybe more than anything else. There was a period of time when I gave up photographing, when I understood this power, when I understood in a deep inner way that I was, in a sense, creating my life moment by moment. I thought for a while, well, why do I need photography? I mean, why am I putting so much energy into making pictures? And I thought, well, maybe I'll stop making photographs. Being that it's all emanating from within, then why continue with this photography? Now, so I stopped, or so I thought I did. I mean, it was to photograph was such an intuitive focus of energy for me that I still was taking photographs, but in my mind's eye, in my sense of myself, I had given up photography for the duration. And then at one point, I thought, well, it's okay. I realize I can live, and I can live well without photography. On the other hand, I love doing photography, so why not? And I went back into it with relish. And when I went back into it, not only with relish, but I abandoned many of the strictures of the dogmas that I considered important philosophies when I was younger. And came more fully in touch with the sublime joy of making pictures. The act itself, not related to the finished product, but to the act of photographing, the act of contemplating an image. And of course, the continuous surprise of what a wonderful photograph could be like, that emanated from my own energy.